Morning, Jason. So, can you pull up the introduction? How are you doing this morning?
Very well. It's a late afternoon here, so it's been a long day already.
Been a long day already. Well, thank you for joining us. Jason is live with us, and he used to have a fancy bio with a list of mental health issues and coaching credentials, and he has many years of experience that somehow he thought helped his self-image look cooler in the world. But when he saw through the illusion of thought and realized that self-image was not a real thing, there was really no further need to develop it. He dropped the titles and the credentials, and he made an ordinary bio. He helps others see through the illusion of who they are not and realize who they truly are. Jason, we're so excited to have you on the show today. And we're just going to be talking about adventure and entrepreneurship and consciousness and how these things all kind of melt together in a really magical way. And there's an essence that we get to when we're at the edge of a thing, whether it's an adventure or a business deal, or sometimes we find it in a relationship, and we're just going to explore that liminal space that comes into play when we enter the unknown.
Yeah, sounds cool. And I like the bio, and thanks for the prompt for a bio, because it just made me kind of like, I don't know where that was. It just came out of nowhere the other day when you emailed me, so it was good to, because have this love-hate relationship with bios. In some part of my life where I'm working with mental health professionals, I have to write something that opens a door for me, and it's kind of like in this conversation that seems kind of fun and about adventure. It's nice to have something a bit different, that sort of feels powerful, but feels true for me too,
Yeah, well, our last conversation we had with you definitely told us some stories about some wild adventures.
Yeah, where do we jump off? So many, such a lifetime of experiences for me, like one big adventure for sure. Like it's strange, isn't it? Because like life is just an adventure anyway, but it's kind of like, for me, I lived life as if it wasn't, as if it was more like a torturous sentence that I'd been afflicted with, that was kind of how it seemed. And it was like I was imprisoned in my own mind, for many years with suffering and addictions and struggles and family that I didn't want and friends that I didn't like and people, in a job and a career that I hated, and not realizing that was all happening within me, regardless of what was going on in the outside world, but thinking it was a result of the life that I'd been, can't think of the right word, the life that had been inflicted on me, and that's just how it looked.
Yeah.
And, when I was a few years in recovery and into the personal development scene, so to speak, so probably in the mid 90s it was. And I'd never been out of Europe. I'd never been out of Europe as a kid, never been anywhere other than that. So, and I had this one friend that the internet had just started. And there was a messenger called ICQ, that were like when the internet very first started. It's probably about 1995, 1996. I bought a PC from PC World, like not really, never having had a computer before or anything, that was an adventure in itself. And I literally broke it within a few days, and I had a screwdriver in it and I took it apart because I always had this way of fixing things. That's kind of just one of the things that I loved. And I got connected somehow with this guy that I'd met in rehabilitation, and he lived in Asia. And he said to me, "Why don't you come to Thailand?" And it was kind of like, and I was just like, that just sounds like, why don't you go to the moon to me, because it's kind of like, I just didn't have, but then next thing I know, I was booking a flight, and going out there. And, like the first time going there for 4 weeks, after 2 weeks, hating it, because it was just kind of like another world. If anyone has been for their first time into Southeast Asia and has never been out of a Western country, will know what I'm talking about. That it's like literally like another world, completely different. But I stayed there after the first couple of weeks of wanting to leave and hating it. I met a girl, fell in love as you do, and then I thought, I want to live here. It's amazing. It's amazing how something like that can change your perspective of stuff. So I literally went home. I mean, I hadn't even been to Bangkok. I literally went home for 2 weeks. When I got home, I booked another flight 2 weeks later, and within 2 weeks, found someone to rent my apartment out at the time, and did all the arrangements that I could to make sure my stuff was paid for, and got on a flight back to Bangkok. And it never once crossed my mind at that time, like what I was going to do when I arrived. Even now that doesn't make sense to me. When I think back about that, I would never do anything that way. And I arrived in Bangkok, and literally got in the taxi with no clue where I was going, and it was kind of like, I remember sitting for a minute. I had a suitcase and a laptop at the time. That must have been huge because I think laptops were probably big back then. And a bag. And I went to Koh San Road in Bangkok because it was the only place that came to mind when the taxi driver asked me, where do you want to go? And I booked this. I went in downstairs to this set of apartments, and I said, I want to pay for 3 nights, and it was literally about 400 baht, which is probably about 6 or 7 quid for 4 nights, maybe $10. And I went upstairs to the room. I thought, I'm not staying here. It was bad, and I thought, well, I can at least have a shower. So I had a shower and bought a paper, and I looked in the Bangkok Post, it was, for some apartments, and I found one that kind of sounded like it might have been better than where I was. And I went in a taxi, got my suitcase, left the one that I'd been to, and it was okay. And I remember I paid 3,000 baht, which is about £50, for 3 months. That's how much it cost me for 3 months there. I had this immediate sense of safety. I thought, oh God, I feel secure here. It's okay. It's safe. It's okay. And that was like the foundation of that crazy adventure, and then there's so much. I spent 10 years there from that, it's like, there was no plans when I went there. I mean, some of the crazy shit that I did when I was there, literally, like, from there, I got a job teaching English at first. And I remember traveling 2 hours on a bus every morning to go and teach English at first. And then moving to this little village in a rural area in the middle of nowhere where everyone looked at you with a wide open mouth as if they'd never seen a Western person before. And the whole village was asleep by 6 p.m. And by 5 a.m. the next day, it was a bustling sort of place. But, me personally, in my, I was always searching for something. I was always looking for something. And to me, at that time, it looked like it came outside of myself. It looked like it was something outside of myself to make me feel better on the inside. And so I did all sorts of crazy shit. I remember like taking all the money. I remember getting 6 credit cards before I left the UK and taking all the money off them through ATM machines in different locations in Bangkok, thinking that I was never returning and that I wouldn't have to pay it back. What sort of idea was that? I remember buying a car. I bought a car in Bangkok and went and got a Thai driving license, and I went and did the Thai driving test, which was literally like 3 different things, and I can't remember. One of them was a brake test, like you were sat in a room and they put a red light on and it was your reaction time to press this pedal. And the other one was these 2 lines that went past each other, and you had to say stop when they got parallel to see if you could tell how close they were. And I can't remember what the third one was, but that was the 3 things, and you got a Thai driving license, so you were legal to drive there.
So you mentioned earlier that as you were kind of packing up your life in the UK and heading off into this void of Bangkok, that you weren't thinking about what you were going to do when you got there, who you were going to be, all of that kind of stuff. What was going through your mind at that time?
Oh, it was definitely an escape. It's like I said about wanting to, that I was always searching for something on the inside. I mean, that had been the story of my life with addictions, with mental health struggles. And, there was always an internal longing for something other than what I had that looked like it came from the outside world, So it was kind of like there wasn't a conscious knowing of what that was, but there was definitely a desire to get out into the world, to do something other than what I was doing, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So then you arrived in Bangkok, you got these jobs, you then went on to forge, you bought a university degree, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that was kind of like
started a whole new adventure.
The next stage of I worked in the school for a while, and it was like, it didn't work out. And then there was a job. Well, actually before that, there was something else. Like before that, I worked in Boiler House. It was in the film Boiler House.
Mm-hmm. No.
Where they kind of like have companies, and somebody owns the whole stocks and shares of the business, and they have them on the stock market, and they make the thing go down. Well, there was companies in Thailand that did that, and I unknowingly worked for one of those, building websites, where I started learning my IT career, building websites and actually being a pretend stockbroker. It was like, that was one of the things I did, and it was really crazy, because that went on for a couple of years, working in those type of businesses. And I remember leaving, I think it was for my brother's wedding. I left Thailand to go back to the UK, and I remember the day I left that the Australian and the US FBI and all the police forces had raided all those companies, and everyone had got arrested and deported out of Thailand. I was just so lucky that I wasn't in the country at the time, so I was doing crazy shit, really. It was like, I was just on an adventure, but oblivious to, to the laws of the land, I guess, and it was only then, when I came back, when I thought, right, I need to get a legit job now. I need to find something that I saw the job for copywriter or website developer or something in an American company that was in Bangkok. And I went out, and I went to Koh San Road again, where I'd originally started my journey, and was directed to somewhere where they create fake degrees, so they said, you need to find the university. So I went on to Google, I guess at the time, and came up with a university and a year and a course near to where I lived, and got this degree. And they get the stamp, and they make it, and they stamp it and all that stuff. And I went along to this job interview with this fake degree, saying, and I remember at the time the guy said to me, you sure they had like design and multimedia or something back in 1990 or something? It was kind of like, he knew, I guess he knew, but it was like, that was the start of my, my many years in web development and IT, where that all started. So yeah, definitely. I mean, that was another,
So all of these things that you told us about, packing a bag and setting off to a foreign land, working in a boiler room, forging a degree, like blagging your way into a job, right, that really you had no right to be in, and then going on to make a successful career out of that. Like all of these things are things that like people, like any one of those things would terrify most people. But the way you tell the story, I don't know if this was the case, like the way you tell the story, it was just like, I need to be somewhere else, so I'm going to go and live in Thailand. I need a job, so I'm going to fake a degree. Like, were you scared at any point during these adventures, or was it just like, this is the next step?
I think it's like, it's worth a little bit of background information that, to me, that stuff was like, I'd spent like from the age of 13 to 23, mostly in jail, committing crime and taking drugs. So like at that time, I was newly in recovery, and probably about 2 or 3 years. And those things kind of seemed insignificant to me at the time, you know, as a, you know, if there's such a thing as a comparison, they just seemed minor, you know, so I wasn't really very scared of doing things like that because I'd lived a life, to be honest. I was back on the, you know, living life differently to what I was, but those kind of things seemed just minor, a way of facilitating the life that I wanted to lead or the adventure that I wanted to be on, you know.
Mm-hmm. So it was really about committing to a new path and steering a new course, and these are minor things that you had to do in order to create a change in your life.
Yeah, I didn't give them much thought at the time, you know. It was just kind of like a fun adventure thing to do, you know. It was really just like everyone does that apparently in Thailand. People just make degrees to get jobs, and you know, it was kind of like the norm there, you know. So you know, I guess that gave me more reason to have less thinking about it, you know, at the time.
So is adventure still a part of your life today?
Yeah, definitely. You know, it's kind of like I've always had this thing where I love going. One of the reasons I loved my time in Asia was because if I go somewhere, I love going somewhere other than typical places. If I travel, you know, in that way, like adventure. If you talk about travel as adventure, you know, like going to places, not typical places where everything's kind of obvious, you know, but more off the beaten path. But adventure in, you know, like in life, you know, in general, like life seems like an adventure. And I think the distinction is that like that it looked for a long time that if I kept doing certain things and behaving in certain ways, and you know, whether that mean keep a job, show up for work, whatever it was, that life was known, you know, that life was a known journey, you know, that if I did a certain set of things that I would, you know, experience a certain set of outcomes, you know, that's how it looked to me. But in my process of all this stuff that's happened over the years and ending up realizing that that's not true, you know, that can't possibly be true. And security, my own personal security, comes from the fact that I know what to do in the moment when there's something to do. It doesn't come from the way I behave or the way I show up in the day, you know, and what certainty it seems like there is on the outside world, that it comes from the inside, it comes from within me. So with that being known, you know, I can do anything. You know, life is an unknown adventure, all of it. You know, there is no certainty. If I do exactly the same today, what I did yesterday doesn't mean that tomorrow will work out the same. The best example is the pandemic. You know, if you'd have asked people before that had started, you know, would everything be okay? Would you know what to do if it happened? Everyone would have give you a panic response going, oh my God, no, we couldn't cope with that. Yet there's so many signs and so much creativity, you know, that's happened out of that people have realized, and ingenuity that people didn't think that they had, you know, before it actually happened. So the security and the willingness to go on adventure in every area of life comes from the fact that I know I'll always be okay no matter what, where I go, what I do, what I invest in, what I create, what I do, who I speak to. You know, it's kind of like that comes from my sense of knowing who I am and not from any set of external circumstances. So with that in mind, life feels like an adventure on a daily basis, you know.
That's such a beautiful way of summarizing it. One of the, just as you were talking there, I thought of Michael Neal, who says that there's no such thing as a decision. Either you know what to do, in which case do it, or you don't, in which case do nothing.
Yeah.
Which I think is like a really beautiful, it's so simple. It's like, if you know what to do, just fucking do it.
Yeah.
And then just as you were coming to the end there about that, well, just everything that you've been talking about is like, we have these two different ways of viewing the world. One is that there is all this adventure and excitement and knowledge and stuff out there that we can go and discover, and in the process learn who we are and learn how resilient we are and how good we are at solving problems and dealing with things like pandemics. Or we can be constrained by our mind and life happens to us. And that is the beauty of deliberately going on adventures, is that you are faced with very real situations where you have to figure out what the solution is, whether that's you've only got a suitcase full of clothes and you suddenly find yourself in Thailand, or you're halfway up a mountain, or you're in a boat halfway across an ocean. Something is going to happen where you're like, okay, I need to deal with this right now.
Yeah.
And in doing so, you realize, because you have to do it, you realize that you can do it. And then if you can then integrate that experience and take it back into your kind of regular everyday life, things like starting a business, you know, having difficult conversations with clients, building relationships, all of those things become easier because you have such a greater inner sense of power of who you actually are in the world.
Yeah, well, nothing can go wrong, right? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's like, how exciting would life be, you know, knowing that like everything's new and you can be curious about it and nothing can go wrong. I mean, if you take it from that perspective, it's kind of like, because you know, all that stuff before, all that idea that the world is outside and inflicted on me, you know, it's kind of like leaves me in a place of looking like there's a destination, like as if there's somewhere to get to. But when in the realization that I'm not who I think I am and the world isn't outside of me, the world is inside of me, then there's no longer anywhere to get to, because everything is always okay now in this moment.
Everything becomes an expression of who we are. And if we are stoked on who we are inside, then everything that we meet in the world outside of us lines up with that. And when everything lines up with who we've decided to be on the inside, and our external world starts expressing that, life just becomes really, really fun and really fantastic. And it kind of is like moving into living in a dream state.
Yeah. And going back to what Tom said, you know, about finding out, you know, like, I can't remember the words you were saying, but what came to mind was something else that Michael said, is like getting over your head, you know, like getting over your head. And it's kind of like, he always said that to me. And I do that all the time. You know, any opportunity where there's a chance to get in over my head, you know, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to speak at this conference? Like with no idea what to say or what, I'll just go, yep, okay. Because that sounds like getting in over my head, you know, like agreeing to something I don't know whether I can do or not. Because in the past, it was always like, I think we talked about it the other day, I can't remember, but it was the metaphor of driving in the fog. You know, it's kind of like that, you can't see the end destination, but you can see 10 meters in front of you, and you can make the whole journey that way just by going one step after another after another. And that was it. What you were saying about decisions, you know, one of the first things I ever had with Michael was about, I was trying to make a decision about leaving a career and to go into coaching career, you know, and he's kind of like said, well, he said to me, can you predict the future, like with your thinking? And I was like, I don't think so. You know, I don't think it works that way. You know, it's kind of like, well, that's what you're trying to do. And I thought, yeah, because I'm sat there like doing mental gymnastics, pros and cons lists of what might happen if I go one way or the other, you know. And I remember Michael saying to me, can you just not do that for a few days and see what happens? You know, I remember just literally consciously not getting caught up in my own thinking about whether it was the right thing to do. And a few days later, I'd literally woke up at 6 a.m. with this real sense of excitement about where my life was going to go, because I knew the decision to make at that time. And it was literally, because that's what happened. I just knew. And until then, I didn't know. And that's all it ever is. You know, it's like there's no way. And ever since that day, which was many years ago, I either know or I don't know. And that's kind of as simple as I keep decisions.
When we're caught in that spiral of like, is this the right thing, the wrong thing to do? There's no space for intuition to show up. There's no space for inner guidance to just like point the way. And when we allow it to do that, it's so obvious that this is the way I need to go. And this, what seems like on paper, this way is the way to go, but it's just actually not.
Yeah.
And
Bill Pettit describes it like the flute in a brass band. He said it's always there, but sometimes you can't hear it because of the trumpets. You
Mhm.
know, it's kind of like that's how I see that intuition or wisdom or mind or however you want to call it. You know, it's kind of like that when our own thinking is really noisy. You know, it's like it's very difficult to hear that. But like when we're in moments, that's why people get their best ideas in the morning, you know, because they wake up like I did that day, you know, with like, no, I hadn't been revving my own mind up all day, hadn't been creating all sorts of craziness in my head, and I just woke up. You know, many people, clients that I have that I work with will say, well, I went to bed not knowing and I woke up knowing. You know, what happens in that process between going to bed and waking up the next day? Well, your mind settles, you know, you get clarity, you get clear, and you can hear that small quiet voice of wisdom, you know, that's always there.
The other thing that's coming to my mind right now is that if you have a sense of urgency, if you feel like you need to speed up, it's time to slow down. If you feel like you're in a rush, it's time to take half an hour and go and meditate, because the answer is not going to come by panicking and scribbling notes, and the answer is going to come by deliberately slowing down and shutting your brain off and allowing it to appear.
I just take that, for me, you know, I take that feeling myself speed up as a warning or an alarm that I need to step away, you know, and then I'll know when I know, you know. It's kind of like that there's really never any times when I have to try and force my way into deciding something one way or the other, you know. I just know that when I'm trying to overthink an answer or a solution or a direction or something that I need to do, then time to slow down, you know, because the answers always come.
The answers do always come, and that's the beautiful thing about stepping into an adventure intentionally, to like, whether it's trying a new restaurant or going to a new city or trying a new experience or going for a rock climb or a ski or meeting with a new person that you haven't met with before. There's an unknown, and that unknown brings up that something really delicious about ourselves, that we get to discover who we are again. We think we know who we are, and we've traveled these pathways that are so well laid over and over and over again. And to taste that, life just has a different flavor, a uniqueness that we get to taste. And when we sip that, it's so transforming. And so I think so many people go on adventures to sip that nectar. I call it dark nectar. They go on an adventure to sip this dark nectar, where we get ourselves into these situations. We don't go out on an adventure to get ourselves into a situation, but being in a situation is an inevitable part of adventure. You go on enough adventures, you're going to be in a situation at some point. And when we're in that situation, it can feel like, or sometimes it really is, such that there may be catastrophic consequences if we aren't able to sort it out. And when we're in that place where it feels like there's something dire in the air, there's a magic that we access, where we transform, and we just find out how brilliant we are. And just doing that consistently over and over again for a lifetime is such an enriching experience. And it gives us a quality, something that like we can sense when someone has gone into the unknown and when they're comfortable there. And it gives us a quality that's unique. And I love it.
Brings me back to what you were saying earlier, Jason, about getting in over your head. And right, as business owners or people who, we are trained from early age that we go to school, we go to university, we get a job, we work for the man, we turn up between 9 and 5, and then we retire. And, hopefully at some point in that process, we have a bit of fun, maybe. and we're trained to be comfortable. We're trained that getting in over our head, that stepping into the unknown, that moving outside of, you know, these four walls where I know where everything is a bad thing because it's dangerous out there and there's lions and stuff. But when you're in that space of being out of your head, as Curtis just said, that's where you find out that magic exists. And that's where amazing businesses come from. That's where folklore heroes come from. You know, that's where amazing parents and lovers and friends come from. Mm-hmm. It's that ability to navigate that uncomfortable space between the known and the
unknown. Yeah. That, I mean, conditioning is so powerful for so many people, you know, and it's like really looks like that. And that's what I was saying earlier about it kind of looks like that life is certain, but life isn't. You know, the illusion of certainty is literally just that. It's an illusion anyway, you know, and it's kind of like the thing is that we've all always been okay. Yet most of us have spent a lifetime thinking that we were not going to be okay quite often. You know, it's kind of like something, whatever this next challenge is in life, it's kind of like, oh my God, this is the one that's going to ruin me, that's going to end it all. And all that, you know, like we've spent a lot of time in our stress response, you know, like in life trying to deal with and work things out. Yet, you know, we are not working things out. They just work out. You know, they just work out.
A beautiful thing I came across the other day, which summarizes that so perfectly, which is today is the tomorrow that we worried about yesterday.
Yeah. And I like what you said, Curtis, because it's kind of like being in new circumstances, I'll call it. You know, like adventure is like, to me, like new can be, well, not only, but like in new circumstances or new experiences in some way. But it definitely bring, you know, like new challenges. And it's like, and like you said about realizing the truth of who you are, you know, realizing that you're always, you know, you've always got that wisdom available to you, that you're always able to navigate any challenge, that you always know what to do in the moment when it's time to do it. Yet we're really bad at like making up an imaginary future and knowing what to do with it now, you know, in this moment. But yet when we're faced with it, when we put ourselves into challenges, circumstances, could be new businesses, new relationships, could be travel adventure, could be anything, you know, that we always know what to do in the moment, always.
It's like we do it backwards.
Yeah.
Like we imagine how it's going to go and then we don't do it as a result. Or we do it not knowing how it's going to go, and it more often than not goes pretty well.
Yeah. And it's really the people who have learned how to engage adventure, wherever they've learned how to answer that call to adventure, to rise up, to challenge, to like create something different. Those people like us, I suppose, have an ability to just make things work, make things happen. And the people around are, you know, a person who has a strong sense of adventure, a strong adventure core as part of their identity. They have an ability to just slip through life, and people look at them like people who are in this mind frame that you're talking about, where people are always worried about what comes next, and they're creating a catastrophe in their mind constantly. And like Tom said, they're staying here their whole life because of this catastrophe, because it feels safe. And look at the people around them who are expressing this sense of adventure, this sense of play and passion and joy. And it's just a mystery. And really all it is just being willing to find out who you are. To go, well, what if this works out? And it's two very simple questions that we ask. One person asks, what if everything goes wrong? And the other person says, what if it all works out? You know, when I was a kid, I would bike to school, and we lived a couple of kilometers away from the school down the highway. And so I would have to like bike down the highway with my BMX bike in kindergarten and or grade 6. And eventually I got like a proper mountain bike. And I'd bike to school every day, and my mom would ask me, what happens if it rains? And I'd be like, I'm going to get wet. And that was my answer every single time. And she never stopped asking. It always worried her. But that was always my answer. I'm going to get wet. And it'd rain, and I'd strip off my t-shirt and I'd tie it to the crossbar on my bike. And I loved it. I would just bike home in the rain, and I'd come home soaking wet. And that mentality of like, you know, everyone in my family wanted to stay safe. Everyone in my family played for security, and I saw how that didn't work out. And I wanted to express who I was. There was something in me that had to get out, that had to be expressed. And adventure is that journey of discovering, you know, who are we?
Yeah, it's all about that for me. You know, it's all about the search. You know, the search was all about the real search was for myself. You know, it's kind of like, although it looked like it came in every other form of you know, like in my bio, you know, developing the image of myself. You know, it was kind of like the realization that I can you know, that there is no such thing. Like the image of myself changes, you know, on a daily basis. It's kind of like there is no fixed me. You know, it's kind of like it's just a set of thoughts and perceptions that I try to give other people and that I have of myself. And when I realized that, you know, it's kind of like then, you know, from there, anything is possible. You can create yourself on any day to be who you want to be, to experience what you want to experience, and that when you see that the outside world is not fixed, it's not solid, it's not as it looks, you know, that there's always something between your own you know, between your experience and the outside world, and that is your perception, your thoughts of it, your thoughts about it, and your thoughts about yourself, you know. And like you've got these two things, you know, you've got who you think you are in the world, and you've got who you think other people think you are in the world, you know, and you've also got how you think the world should be. And when when you stop navigating in those realms, you know, it's kind of like then life becomes a different adventure, you know, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Jason, on the subject of becoming who we want to be and doing what we want to do, as you know, the second half of this conversation is a space where we will endeavor to support you. So how can we do that? What are you working on that you could do with some clarity on, or how can we support you in this moment?
My literally, like I live like I live exactly as I've said, you know, like for a while, for quite a long time now, that you know, life is living through me. You know, I have less of me, and I always find that that's one of the things that I say quite often, is that life seems to be so much better when there's less of me, you know. And by less of me, I mean less of the idea of me, you know, like when life stopped becoming about this idea, this self-image, this thing that I had to create and grow and make better in the world, and actually just kind of, I read a book called The Surrender Experiment. Have you guys heard of that or seen it?
No.
It's a really cool book, and it's about a guy that ended up owning $1 billion IT company called Michael Singer, and he started off life as a hippie, and all through his life it was literally like he kept being pushed in different directions by life, you know. Like he was, at one point he was a builder, and someone was asking him to write IT software, and he was like, no, I'm a builder, you know, I don't do this computer stuff, you know, I just like building houses. But then he kept surrendering to what life wanted for him, you know, like, so all the directions that he was pushed in. And this went all the way from literally living in a van in a field to being, you know, the owner of $1 billion IT corporation. And that's kind of like, you know, similar to how I see it, you know, in my life, that it's like life is living through me, that all these things are just coming to me, and I'm just going, okay, that seems cool, you know. And it's kind of like I'm just doing the next thing. And I've really relaxed on the time that it's taking for anything, because I realized that, you know, there is no destination. And when I say realized, I mean, it's all right to say that in intellectual terms. Yeah, there's no destination. Anyone can say that and anyone can see that. But does the life that you're living reflect that too? You know, it's kind of like, does your experience of your day reflect that too? You know, it's kind of like, and every now and again, you know, I get caught up in the idea of me and I say things are not happening fast enough and I get some sense of urgency and I want to speed it up. But actually, then I remember that I'm enjoying the journey, you know, of creating in life, of my creative expression, you know, and the stuff I'm doing is around addiction treatment, you know, and I don't know who my clients are yet for that, you know, but I created the resource just knowing with that mindset of driving in the fog, you know, feeling like the next right thing to do. And, you know, in the process of that, you know, I've been doing a lot of work in the gambling addiction world and speaking for and doing trainings for people in that industry. And that wasn't something I set out to do. It literally came to me. I wrote an article for a magazine and more people came to me. And then people came to me as clients and I read your article. People from other businesses came and said, hey, could you help us with this? Can you speak at a conference? I've ended up speaking at 3 conferences this year, you know, off the back of that thing. And it wasn't something that I didn't set out with that in mind. So literally just following what life is, you know, what life is giving to me, what life is flowing through me, you know, and you know, I've got to say, to be honest, I get out of bed most days with an excitement about what's going to happen, not knowing who I'm going to meet or where I'm going to end up or what meetings are going to happen, you know, and it's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. So I think what Tom was saying is, in these podcasts, we've been doing, you know, we have a really good conversation in the first hour or half hour and just talk about, like, you know, life story and experiences that play into this idea of the adventure effect of, you know, adventure as a gateway to the soul. And then we move into a little bit of like a coaching offering where we just, like, if there's something that you want to talk about or something that's like deeply on your mind, just a sounding board to have that conversation in real time. So if you'd like to move into that space and play there, we'd love to just support you in whatever's on your mind right now.
I've got to dig deep to find something because literally, like, I don't have anything that feels like, you know, that I feel in any, don't know the right word, you know, where there's nothing that feels like it's not going as it should be, you know, I guess is my way of seeing it. I mean, I guess if there was something, you know, and like that I'm just following the flow with, it's the creation of this program, you know, and you know, what happened, the story of it is, just briefly, is that, like, someone asked me what I was doing because they saw the change in me and they asked if I could do it for their business. So I created a whole program, wrote a book, and then I, after a year of messing about, they decided they couldn't work out what it was, you know. So I thought, okay, now I've created this. Why did I create it? Because they don't want it, so there must be another reason for it. And so I turned it into an e-learning platform. I built that myself, built a whole website for it and everything, you know, and now it's kind of just sat there, and I'm doing all this other work that's supporting me, my profile within the space that I'm in, you know, of addiction treatment. And that all feels good. And that's why I say I haven't really got any issues. I'm not troubled by this, but like, if I wanted anything, it would be to see the next step as to, you know, how I would find clients for that and launch it or do something with it, or, you know, in my mind, it looks kind of like a huge thing because it's got potential, and I know that it's useful because my understanding has been life-changing for me, and I know that it'll be life-changing for others. So it's really how to, if there is anything to do, you know, what is that next thing to do?
So why don't we play in that space of exploring the next step together? and just see what comes out of a conversation with three people having a dialogue.
Yeah, sounds good.
So you mentioned that you mentioned a couple of times that you don't know who your clients are, or who your clients would be for this. What are the benefits of going through the course?
Well, I narrowed it down a bit in that, you know, it's for people with addictions that don't need medical intervention. So anyone with a process addiction or an addiction that doesn't require a detox of some type, because obviously you can't cope with that in a virtual environment. I'm not, and the reason I say I don't know is that it could be specifically any of those, could be a specific addiction, you know, make it all about gambling, make it all about eating disorders, make it all about sex and porn addiction or whatever it is, or all of them separately, you know, like from a marketing point of view. And so I've got an idea who they are and what they struggle with for sure, and what they'd get out of it. I'm just not sure from because I've had a marketing business as well as a coaching business, you know, putting my marketing head on, it's kind of like getting clear on what I might do to go in any of those directions, or how I might, you know, make it more specific. Or
what excites you? What excites you?
Seeing people wake up to who they are.
And the question that jumped into my mind is, which of these pathways that you could travel does your story most powerfully speak to?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, like literally, I've got the worst story of struggles, you know, with endless list of things. So absolutely that, you know, like anyone who's tried everything to feel better, you know, who's had a history of trying all sorts of different ways of getting somewhere in the world, or feeling better about themselves, or escaping from an addiction in that way.
Because the people who will be most eager to be your clients from a marketing perspective in this world of coaching is the people who can relate to your story the best.
Yeah.
They're going to be people who are like you, who they're over here and you were over there, and you've gone on this journey and traveled this arc, and now you're over here somewhere different. And they would like to be in that place that is different. And when they hear your story, they're going to be like, oh shit, this is the guy I've been looking for. And so really learning how to tell your story in a powerful way, the people who relate to that story, those are your ideal clients.
Yeah. And that's the thing, what I said, you know, is that I'm doing that to some extent. You know, I'm speaking at conferences, speaking at events, and doing all sorts of stuff. And this stuff has its own organic trajectory, you know, like that it's happening. It's not like I'm just sat here tapping my fingers every day, you know. It's kind of like that when I get involved, like more of the story of me, then I want it to be faster, you know. I want it to happen quicker. But actually, if I sit back and look at the facts of what are happening, is this, that something's happening anyway, you know, that's facilitating what I want.
Yeah.
So if you get very clear about, like you mentioned sex and porn and gambling and you know, various other process addictions, if you do get clear on which one of those resonates most with your story, or whether it's all of them that resonate with your story, just finding that intention of this is the space will naturally increase that momentum, whether or not you get involved or not.
Yeah, I can see that. And I guess for me, it comes back to like, when you know, you'll know,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
and that's why I don't get too stressed out with it, because also my life's really good. You know, I'm doing great. I mean, I've got other businesses as well that are really cool and exciting, and coaching clients that are good and other stuff. And it's like that, you know, I realized that I could hang out in that as a kind of, not so much an excuse, but as like more of a sort kind of like a, um, it gives me somewhat of a, you know, a respite from sort of putting too much focus on that. But what I also know is that like what's actually happened in this process is like has not been my choice. It's just kind of happened, like the creation of it from the start to where it is now, to all the articles and all the conferences that I've spoken at and all the stuff and the people that are contacting me that are interested in what I'm creating, has not been something that I've gone out and intended to do. It's just something that's like naturally happened that I've engaged in and got curious about. So if anything, I'm kind of like, I'm curious to keep following that, you know, where life is taking me, than to try and force it, you know, in some
What happens
direction.
if you step even more out of the way? Can you do that?
I think that's a valid point, you know. I think that's a valid question for sure. And it's something I've definitely asked myself, you know, like what would life have me do? You know, it's kind of like, where is it that I are somehow still caught up in my conditioning or ideas or fears or anything about stuff? You know, is there some sort of clear direction? Um,
Where could you be putting too much effort in?
yeah, that's another great point. You know, I've got other businesses, and I kind of like, I think one of them provides financial income, you know, and life, and the other is my passion. You know, well, they both provide finances, but like one kind of far outweighs the other at the moment. Um, it's not a bad position to be in for sure. I don't see any struggles in it, but like I definitely like it to tip the other way, I guess, if there was a balance thing.
Is there an element of moving into this where there's a need to embrace, or a necessity to embrace, that feeling of being in over your head again?
Yeah, I think you were looking in exactly the same place as me, because as I was talking, I kind of thought what came to mind was that at some point, you know, and I've been aware of this for ages, you know, that at some point there might be a place where I have to go, right, you know, like one business is going, and the money that comes with it is going too, you know. It's kind of like, because I'm just going to do this other thing that I love and feel passionate about. Um, and I just have trusted that I'll know when that is, you know. And as I keep going back to, it's not happening in my time. Like if it was up to me, it would happen quicker. And I'm well aware, but it's like, but it hasn't been clear to me, you know, that now's the time to do that, you know, for whatever
Is
reason.
Are you living in a world where you have the staff and the people around you for you to just step away from that business and allow it to run itself, and allow, by withdrawing your presence from it and moving into a consulting role, that the other people in the company would get to grow into something greater than they already are?
It's difficult because it's kind of like a business that I've set up all around me, you know, so
Mm.
it's like it requires a lot of me, you know, in there. And that's what's always made it difficult to just step away from and still get the financial, you know, rewards of that business. So it's good at the moment that I have time and ability to do both things, you know, a lot of the time, and I can balance that without it taking over my time with my children, you know, and my weekends, because I don't, you know, I won't compromise that. You know, I love the life that I have
Mm.
and the things that I do outside of my working time. Um, but yeah, I mean, they're all great points, and they're all things that I consider, you know, on a you know, not regularly, but like often I consider them. You know, could I do this? Could I do that? And I just figure that when the time comes, that I'll kind of know the answer to those.
Is there, just to explore that a little further, is there someone working for you who is like you, or who could take, say, a 20% chunk of what's on your plate? Someone who would be really, really good at dealing with a 20% chunk that would be really easy for you to let go of, and you could take that extra 20% and put it into this other project.
Not that comes to mind, but definitely that I keep looking for. It's kind of like I'm always looking for ways, that are being presented to me, or opportunities and ideas that are coming my way that would facilitate me, and somehow making something else, work. But I'm also mindful of the fact that, like, to me, life feels effortless, like through the realizations that I've had, through the experiences that I've had, that anything that feels like, that I have to really, like, this may sound wrong to people listening, but like anything that I have to put any effort to is not something I really want to do, because the business that I'm in, the life that I'm in, the experiences that I'm having all feel effortless, and they all feel like the things that just flow through me. And like in the past, my life was full of efforting, where I had to get up every single day and I had to strive and I had to make things happen. And I was always full of stress and worry and fears and insecurities. Whereas now, I couldn't give a shit what happens, to be honest. I know that I'm going to be okay. And it's kind of like, and I'm having fun on the journey. So it's really kind of like that, in a lot of ways, I'm just kind of, rather than being focused on where I'm heading, I'm really just enjoying each day as it comes, because I think that's what everyone wants, right? Really, because the only thing is that drives people to new things is the idea that somehow they'll feel better, or somehow it's more in line with what they're supposed to be doing, or somehow, but like all of that still misses out on the journey, right?
Yeah. So what if you put the question into your subconscious mind and just said, what if the people that you need to create everything are already around you? Like, who are the people? Because we attract the people to us, like the resources that we have are already there quite often. And so who are the people inside of your company who are looking for an opportunity to grow, who are looking for a chance to expand, and may even be thinking about like, well, fuck, if I'm not going to get the chance here, maybe I'm going to walk away and go somewhere else. What happens if you start poking around and asking around, like, who's looking for an opportunity to grow? What is the thing that you're really interested in doing to help grow the company? And if you just started injecting that question into the culture, what answers might come back to you, and what answers might surprise you?
Yeah, it's definitely something that I consider, from time to time, and will continue to consider, because I'm just figure that life is always putting opportunities my way, and that there's always, it's like you said, it's worth asking the question, because there are times when things appear in my conscious awareness about life that I hadn't realized, were there before. So it's like, yeah, for sure, I consider that. I do consider that, and without any stress, without any need for it to be a certain way. I think the last thing that I didn't say before was that, there is a destination to life, and the destination is the journey, and it's kind of like, that was my big realization, was that, like, having fun and enjoying life on a daily basis is kind of like, it's no point getting to the end of life, right, and going, oh God, right now I'm here, but it's been shit for the last 50 years. It's kind of like, I want to enjoy it now, enjoy the adventure now,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we're coming to the end of our time together. Thank you for being such an amazing guest on the show. How can people get in touch with you if they want to or need to?
Yeah, my coaching website, wideworldcoaching.com, is best way to get hold of me. And if you want to hear more conversations, the podcast misunderstandingsofthemind.com podcast is on iTunes, Spotify, and it's on the website. You can find it on my coaching website too, where I have conversations about common misunderstandings in psychology, in life, and there's all sorts of really cool explorations on there of different subjects where there are common misunderstandings.
Amazing. So we'll put all of those details in the comments and the notes below the video. And all that's left is to say thank you for exploring the adventure effect with us. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. And thank you for sharing your wisdom and your insights.
And thank you for playing.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.